Hey everyone, this is Talky Hands, where I do the talking and my hands give a little performance. Yeah, I know, it sounds kind of strange, but I think it's also kind of catchy because what I'm going to be talking about in the videos I plan on making don't really concern my face, so, but we tend to use our hands a lot when we talk about things. So, there you have it. Okay, enough intro. Talking hands, where I do the talking, my hands do a little performance. So anyway, let's jump right into it. Today's episode 1. A healthy body starts with a healthy mindset, not morality. So I know that got a bit deep out of nowhere, and trust me, it's not going to be as hard to talk about as it sounds. So first off, think about this. What comes to mind when you think of a healthy body? Maybe you think of having an ultra thin body, super slim legs, very prominent abs, a very muscular build, maybe a smaller butt, for crying out loud, maybe a bigger butt, I don't know, maybe a thigh gap, maybe muscles from head to toe, whatever you can think of. But that's just a little exercise to get us started here. What comes to mind when you think of a healthy body? Okay, now with that in mind, what is your idea of reaching that healthy body if you've not already attained what you feel is a healthy body for you? Well, most of the time, some of the time, I imagine that a lot of modern day culture has a lot to do with it. Think about it. We see ultra thin, ultra muscular people in magazines, in the news, on TV. It's everywhere you go, right? It's like that's the new standard for having a healthy body. If you want to look like so and so, you need to follow this diet, or you need to do this and you'll lose weight or gain muscle in so and so many days. It's crazy, right? Now, instinctively, a lot of this sounds ridiculous because everyone's bodies are different, right? Some people can exercise their butt off and their body is not going to be ultra thin or ultra muscular. Some people have a quicker metabolism than other people. Some people need to eat more because they're simply just more active or athletic. The possibilities are endless on this. But the important thing to remember is that to achieve a healthy body, no matter what kind of body type you have, I think, from my perspective, it really just starts with having the proper mindset. See, that doesn't sound too hard to do in theory, but the trick comes with how modern culture handles it. Think about it. Let's start with something simple, like food. Now, remember, a healthy body can apply to more than just the body physically, but let's stick to that example for now. So imagine that you are someone who wants to lose weight. So you decide to go on a diet, okay? So typically what happens in a diet, paleo, keto, whatever those are called, honestly, I don't really know. It sounds like there's tons and tons of that kind of stuff going on right now. But, okay, so imagine that you're going on a diet. Chances are your diet means holding some foods high up on a platter. They're good for you. They are the best food. And then you put some other foods, essentially you put them in jail. It is a crime if you eat one of these. You're breaking the rules if you eat any of it. And if you break one of those rules and eat one of those jailed foods, you're a failure. Yeah, that's typically the mindset that happens with dieting, which is why I've come to believe dieting does not work. What it does, it lures you into the prospects of somehow being able to reach this body that you so desperately want. But then in reality, you're really taking a toll mentally and physically. Because what might happen, let's say that you start restricting yourself from eating certain foods, right? And then out of nowhere, you start craving certain foods that say you've made more restrictive, because in making them more restrictive, you've made them more appealing. Even if they're things that you wouldn't normally crave. So let's say something really simple, like crackers, okay? Crackers, I'll admit, are not like vegetable type food, I could probably get a lot more nutrients from like a carrot or an apple, right? But crackers aren't bad for you. They're just food. And that's the thing. We start associating morality with our food, which is where the problem sort of starts. So let's say you don't normally crave crackers, but then because you're restricting them in your diet, you start craving them more and more. And guess what's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to reach the tipping point, and you're just going to eat that whole package of crackers. And then you're going to look at that empty package and beat yourself up because you feel that you have failed in your diet. You have broken the rules, right? And so what's going to happen then? Guess what? The next day, you're going to try to probably punish yourself by not eating anything. So you're going to get hungry. You're going to start craving. And it just goes over and over. It's a cycle. And that's where taking out the morality of eating really can come in handy, I think. Because when you really actually drop the food rules, then you start looking at food neutrally, okay? No food is inherently good or bad. I like to think of it as growing foods. Some food helps you grow more than others, and some food doesn't help you grow as much, but everything's okay in moderation. So when you look at food as neither good or bad, as neither good nor bad, I should say, grammar, then you don't start craving them out of just crazy business. You actually start to be able to ask yourself, do you really want this food? And that's where intuitive eating comes into place. You think of babies. Babies are born intuitive eaters, intuitive thinkers. They cry when they want milk, when they want food, when they want sleep, when they want something in their mouth, most of the time. But then when those needs are met, they're not crying anymore, right? And then somewhere along the road, we lose sight of that intuition because I think society starts bombarding us. So we have these pictures in our head. By the time we're old enough to really process all that information together, we start thinking, okay, all these places keep showing me, say, super muscular people or super thin people. So that must be a normal that I need to reach. And if I don't meet that standard, then I am not qualified to be a part of today's society. Well, that's wrong. And I think the problem is, no matter what kind of body type you have, I'll admit, I like to think of it as both sides of the spectrum. If the middle is where you want to be, a healthy weight or a healthy body, just in general, you have people on one side who are dangerously overweight or obese, and, they could develop complications with those, diabetes, just that sort of thing. But then you've got people who are underweight, who are not eating enough, and then they could, I imagine, have lower bone density, osteoporosis perhaps, because they're not getting enough nutrients as they need. So you really don't want to be on either side of those spectrums. You kind of just want to stay around the middle. But I think that no matter where you start, you always can find a way to reach that middle level, because it just really starts with mindset. Once you ditch the morality, then all that's left is to think about a mindset that you can follow and that you can trust yourself in, that you can trust yourself with. And then that's where a healthy body comes into place. And another thing I think is also true is that we listen to what society tells us are these standards for what we should be listening to, when really we should be listening to our own bodies. Say maybe you have a friend who eats a ton more than you do, but then that person never seems to gain any weight. Whereas if you ate, say, half that amount, maybe you'd put on some pounds, right? Maybe they've just got a bigger metabolism, a quicker metabolism than you do. That doesn't mean that it's wrong if you, say, eat that amount sometimes, but the important thing is everyone's body is different. So you have to, I know it's hard to do, and I know it probably sounds kind of counterintuitive, but in a way that makes sense, because a lot of these standards are counterintuitive. They counter our intuition. And one thing I want to point out about this stuff, I've really gotten a good insight onto how to tackle these kind of societal standards from podcasts I've been listening to by Kendra who runs the Lazy Genius Collective website. I'll link it in the description below. But she has a really interesting take on a lot of this kind of stuff, so if you get a chance, definitely check her out. Okay, so back to the point at hand. when you stop associating your morality with what you're doing, what you're eating, whatever, because really you can apply that in a lot of ways, then you start to see your life, see your body holistically. You see your health holistically. You start to think how you could actually help your body. So, for instance, another way that's not necessarily food related, and I'm just going to give an example. Let's say, you see a lot of, I guess this one might probably be geared more toward girls in a way, but one thing I like to think of is when I was younger, especially when I was younger, I used to see pictures of famous girls or women, and I would just think, my fingernails are never going to look as good as theirs, because I had a bit of a habit when I was younger. I'm getting out of it, but one important thing that I found out about myself as a person, because I'm an artist, I use pencils a lot, and I really like to draw, and I don't like having extremely long nails that I'm scared are going to break if I say put on a pair of jeans, because then it just makes me too scared to do anything kind of normal on a regular basis. So as I've gotten older, I've realized I don't really care if my nails are short or long anymore, as long as they're not hindering me from what I need to do. And it was interesting because a friend of mine told me once, she's an artist as well, but she said that she's never really cared so much about how her nails look, as long as she's able to do what she needs to do, in her case, make art. And that's a really interesting point for me to think about, because in light of all the society showing us that these famous people have these wonderful looking nails, and you kind of feel like a failure at times if you don't meet that standard, similar to the food situation. But really you're not, because not everyone's the same. Some people might simply just be born with shorter nails. I mean, that could be a genetic thing in itself. I mean, nobody's nails are the same. I mean, I've seen people sometimes, they have really long nail beds. And I don't even think anyone I know actually has nail beds that long, but that's the point. People are different. And another thing is just not relying on society so much to define a standard, because really, what defines normal? Nobody's the same. So if anything, normal is what we see. That's only one part of the population, I like to think of it. And really,